social isolation is really bad for your healthy aging. And the data there are very strong, this linkage between the two. As we get older, we tend to become a recluse. And that's not good because that interaction with our family, our friends, or whatever network, whether it's in person ideally, or even if it's virtual, it's essential. We're social animals and our mental health depends on it. And as you know, mental health interacts with our physical health. And this is a great way to deal with anxiety and stress, depression by being connected with other people.
Welcome to Longevity by Design, a podcast designed to give individuals access to the leading scientific information in the field of longevity. The ability to add years to your life and life to your years needs no opinion. Join us as we ask science to take the wheel. In each episode, Dr. Gil Blander joins a co-host and an industry expert in the field of longevity, shining a light and getting the answers to the key question: how can we live a longer, healthier life?
Hello, I'm Dr. Gil Blander. Welcome to Longevity by Design, how to live longer, healthier life. We are produced by Inside Tracker, your science-based guide to optimize your body from the inside out. Today, we are honored to be joined by Dr. Eric Topol, a pioneer cardiologist, scientist, and best-selling author whose work is reshaping the landscape of modern medicine. Dr. Topol is the founder and director of the Script Research Translation Institute, executive vice president at the Script Research, and a senior consultant in cardiovascular medicine at the Script Clinic in La Jolla, California. He has published over 300 peer-reviewed articles with more than 370,000 citations, placing him among the top 10 most cited researchers in medicine. His principal scientific focus has been on genomics and digital tools, utilizing artificial intelligence analytics to individualize medicine. Notably, he pioneered the development of several medications routinely used in medicine practice, including Plavix. Dr. Topol has led clinical trials in over 40 countries involving more than 200,000 patients. He has also edited over 30 books, including the textbook of interventional cardiology and textbook of cardiovascular medicine. Over the past decade, Dr. Topol has become a leading voice in digital health, genomics, and artificial intelligence, authoring influential books including The Creative Destruction of Medicine, The Patient Will See You Now, Deep Medicine, and most recently, Super Agile, an evidence-based approach to longevity. His leadership in NIH Precision Medicine Initiative and the UK's NHS workforce planning has placed him at the center of the effort to personalized and future-proof healthcare. In this episode, we will deep dive into Dr. Topol's vision for healthcare system driven by data, empowered by technology, and focus on optimizing both lifespan and healthspan. Welcome, Dr. Topol.
Thank you, Gil. Nice to be with you.
Thank you so much. And I would like to start with a bit about the scientific foundation and your personal journey. And specifically, while I was doing the research for this episode, I noticed that your father had type 1 diabetes and experienced significant health challenges. How did witnessing his journey influence your initial interest in medicine and shape your early aspiration in the medical field?
Yeah, well, thanks. Going into my childhood, I watched my father suffer all the consequences of autoimmune diabetes, which he had as a teenager, and eventually, went blind by age 49, despite the early types of laser for treatments. And he also ultimately, had renal failure and peripheral vascular disease and, amputation. I mean, he went through everything. So I watched a person, a young person go through, really hell. This was a time when, there was not even finger sticks for blood, but rather urine dipsticks, right? So I sometimes would go to his appointments and I would see, what it was like to interact with his physicians. And so I had early on had said, well, maybe I should go in medicine, that maybe I can help somehow, because this is such a horrible disease. And that was enticing to me. I didn't ultimately go into the field that diabetology, and I even had lots of, vacillations about it. But his experience, which was really awful, um, and compromised life at such a young age, it had a big impact.
Yeah, no, sorry about that. But I think that's a good lesson for all of us that don't take life as a given. Every day
Oh
is
yeah, yeah,
yes, and live it well.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So
Couldn't
yeah,
agree more with you on that.
yeah. Thank you so much for that. Another point in your interesting career is during your undergraduate study at the University of Virginia, you focus on biomedicine and even wrote a thesis on the prospect of genetic therapy. And that was early. Like at that time, I don't know if anyone knew about genetic therapy. So what drew you to this area of study, and how did you lay the groundwork for your future endeavor in genomic and personalized medicine?
Yeah, so I was very lucky to wind up at University of Virginia, a great public, uh, university that allowed me to pick my major, and I picked it to be genetics or biomedicine, and I was excited. And genetics was to me was such a fascinating science, and so as I get in deeper into it, it was just the beginning of when people were talking about being able to um, have gene intervention. So I decided I would write this thesis. It makes me feel very old because it's 50 years ago, 1975, prospects for gene therapy in man. I still have it. I've looked at it a few times in the years since and said, this is crazy. How did I come up with this, nutsy notion? Anyway, as you know, Gil, it took many years for this to take hold. And now we have not just gene therapy, we have genome editing. And
Yeah.
that fascination did also get me into the early days of recombinant technology like TPA. And so I was always interested in how could we use genetics to improve medicine. And it started at a very young age. I mean, I was, when I started college, I was 16, and, here I was fascinated by this, and I still am today, all these years later.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And it's also rare that a clinician, usually they are dive into medicine and they don't look left and right. And I think that you are a great example of someone that look right and left and top and down and learn and try to bring all the information to the clinician, but also to the larger audience. And that's actually a good transition to discuss your recent book, Super Ager. I actually had the pleasure to read this book over this weekend. And I have to say that I really enjoyed reading it. The reason for that is I read a lot of books about longevity, and I'm actually in longevity the last time of 40 years. But it's always from someone that is inside the field, is like the people that there and the dreamer. And I really like to hear your perspective of a clinician, that a cardiologist that spent decades on decades in medicine. How do you see longevity? What is your interest, and what is the future of that? So I have plenty of questions. I really hope that we'll have enough time to discuss all of them, because we have a limited amount of time. And my first question is, you started the book by talking about a 98 years old patient that you really like. And so what have you learned from her? And was she the reason that you decided to write the book?
Yeah, so this is Lee Rushall, who, as you say, is 98, and she is remarkable. She's totally crisp intellect, wit, memory, and she is, a dynamo. So we had at Scripps Research, we had her. I interviewed her in front of our big, what we call the front row lecture last week, and she just had the whole audience, joking with them, and it's amazing. So, why she was so fascinating to me is because she brought back the Welderly study we did years before. And the fact that she's 98 and never had any significant illness, and is so intact. And that her parents died at very young ages. Her brothers, again, in their 50s and 60s, died. And she's 98. Why is she 98 and so healthy and vibrant? And this is why we spent 7 years to collect people like her that we call the welderly. And now, I guess I'd use the term super agers, but that gets to the nuts of it. We're not interested in longevity. We're interested in, Healthspan, super aging, to have free of major disease, age-related diseases, right? So she exemplifies it. And so she helped me motivate me, inspire me to do the book. But it was something that's been on my mind ever since, I received that welderly study, and we spent so much resources and so many years, and of course, doing whole genome sequences on all those people and finding almost nothing. That was the shocker, is that we thought we were going to see all these eureka we got the gene variants for healthy aging because no one had looked at that. They're always looking at how long does someone live, but this is a different phenotype, a different category. And it's a pretty unique cohort. At any rate, it's been in the background. And then one other thing I would say is what also got me going is that there's so much bunk out there. There's so much pseudoscience and, peddling stuff with no data, hawking anti-aging supplements and whatnot. Not that there isn't some good science too, but there's some really bad stuff. So between, Lee, my patient, and the background of watching all this promotion of with devoid of any evidence, that's I got to write a book on this because it also brings in the whole AI world, which is I'm into, and brings in the individualized data story. So it really came together. That was the rationale.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And I remember I interviewed Dr. Ali Turkmani, which worked together with you at the script a few years ago, and we discussed this paper. And it was really surprising, I assume also for you, that you looked, I think that it was almost 1,000 patients, if I recall, and basically almost nothing in the genetics.
Yeah.
So can you...
1384 was the number.
Wow.
1,384. And it took 7 years. My daughter, Sarah, is the one that traveled all over the place to get you, because she had to go to their home, collect their blood. And she's found these people and screened them all that they fulfill. And by the way, there were a lot of people who wanted to claim they were the elderly, but when she got to interview them, they weren't the elderly. Their medical records, they'd had a stent or they had this or that. So to actually get the real deal, it took 7 years.
Yeah. So a question that I wanted to ask you later, but now that we discussed a bit genetics, so what percentage of our longevity is detected by our genetics versus the other factors? What is your view for that?
Well, it has a contribution, but if you're just looking at, ability to live to 85 plus without cardiovascular cancer or neurodegenerative, the genes are playing a relatively small role, or at least the DNA sequence. There may be another biologic layer we'll get into, which is the immune system. And also could be the element of luck, although I'm not thinking luck is the big dominant factor here. There should be more lucky people if that was the case. So I think it isn't so much in the DNA. There are some families that have a pattern, that everybody lives to 95 and everybody is resilient. But we didn't find that. Most of the people in our study had patterns just like Lee Rushall, which is, it's not in the family, it's not heritable, and it isn't in their genomes either.
So what is their secret? And specifically, in your book, you mention 5 dimensions of Healthspan. So can you discuss those?
Yeah. So within those 5 dimensions, I believe that that includes the differential diagnosis of everything. Yeah. Firstly, we have lifestyle, and most of the people in this group do have a pretty healthy lifestyle. I mean, there are a couple that say their secret is because they ate 2 Hostess Twinkies every day, or crazy stuff like that, or even a couple that smoke cigarettes. Really amazing, but most of them practice a very healthy lifestyle with their diet, with their exercise, physical activity, and their sleep and other factors. Now, and also socially engaged. They didn't live in a cave as a hermit. Then the next thing is the omics, and the omics include the DNA we've been talking about, but now much more we're seeing the proteins and the gut microbiome, and especially what I call the immunome, which is all our immune system features. That is probably the biggest omic in play here. And that brings in all the others, okay? That brings in the gut microbiome, and it brings in the DNA and RNA and proteins, et cetera. The next is cells. Speaking of immunity, that's where not just our B and T cells, but our cells throughout the body. And as you know, that's becoming a form of therapy. I mean, cells as a living drug, giving people back their own cells that are engineered or engineering them within the body, which is another way we're going to extend Healthspan and also understand super aging. And then finally, of the 4 data sources is drugs and vaccines, which is another way we can extend Healthspan. We'll talk more about that. Again, it intersects with the immune system. We keep getting back into the immune system. All of those 4 of the 5 have an immune system connect, right? And then the AI pulls it together. So you need multimodal AI. You can't do this. So if I had your multi-billion data point skill, I don't have the brain to analyze that. But with multiple layers of data, AI is perfect for this. And it can say, you know what? All your organ clocks and everything looks great except for this one thing. And we're going to get all over it, and we're going to prevent that disease from ever occurring, of the 3 big diseases. So that's where AI comes in. It isn't the source of the data, but it's our unique way. Now we have these large reasoning models. So it's not even just, the idea is now we can actually go into a deeper analytical phase of the data, which is phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And actually, you mentioned the vaccine, and I've seen you on Twitter talking a lot about COVID in the last few years, and how vaccine actually changed our life. I couldn't imagine. Maybe you have a model, but what would happen if we want to have the vaccine for COVID? I assume that tens of millions of additional people will die. And
it's projected that 30 million were saved, just from the mRNA vaccines, no less the other vaccines. Yeah. And as you say, we were looking at a horrific pandemic for death and disability. As it is, we had plenty. But had the vaccines not become available within 10 months of having the SARS-CoV-2 sequence, look what would have happened. I mean, it's unimaginable. So we're lucky. And that, what gets me now, Gil, is that with that triumph, one of the greatest in the history of medicine, we have people that are not just bashing the vaccines, but claiming that they're a poison. When in fact, look, they saved a lot of lives. They're not perfect, but we did a lot of good with them, and we can build on that and make them better, But a lot of people have lost sight. They take this for granted. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that I don't want to get into the political environment right now, but I think that that's a great example why we need a strong science and strong academia, and allow the academic to have the freedom to study whatever they want, because nobody knew that the COVID will come. And when you have a few scientists that study that, then you can, it's like a memory cell in the immune system. You mentioned the immune system. Those are the memory cell of the immune system that are ready to actually create the new vaccine. So again, I really support the effort of the academia, and I know that you support. And by the way, I watched the event at Script last week, and it was
Good,
yeah,
good.
it was really encouraging to see you and see the team there, and it was a great event. So one follow-up question about you. So you said lifestyle plus, and part of lifestyle is a nutrition or diet. So what, in your opinion, a diet-related modification are the most effective in promoting a longer health span?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we've learned this is a compilation of so much data, randomized studies, the recent study of the 105,000 people with 30-year follow-up, with only 9% reaching healthy aging after age 70 or 75. And so much data that a plant-based diet, Mediterranean diet, I mean, yes, can have some animal fat or protein, sure, but the main thing is that we have a diet we know reduces inflammation, that is not pro-inflammatory. So the things that increase inflammation, like red meat, that's a problem if you have that on a frequent basis. Also, ultra-processed foods, many of these ingredients that are the alien ingredients that you've never heard of, that you see on packages, the boxes, cans, these are very pro-inflammatory. So you want a diet that not just doesn't have features that promote inflammation, but you want to actually have one that's very healthy to reduce it. So we know what that diet is, and that's proven unequivocally, in my mind, by so many different ways to study it, but including randomized trials, which, that's hard to do with diets over years to get people to be adherent to this diet or that diet. So that's pretty much the only other thing I would just mention is right now in the US, we have this protein craze, and we have these people that are promoting protein in the diet at a level that's never been backed up by evidence. And that's dangerous because we've seen studies to show that will increase inflammation, particularly if it's animal-derived protein, but even without. And also it will promote atherosclerosis, the last thing we want to do. So don't believe these crazed diets that don't have data. You know what? If you have data, I'll be happy to review it. But I reviewed everything about this protein, and even if you're older, even if you're building muscle mass by weightlifting, you can't get up to these crazy levels, but you can increase it some, from 1 kilogram per one gram per kilogram today per, 1.3, 1.4, but not to 1 gram per pound or higher, which is what some have advocated.
Yeah, and there is a data that's coming right now that actually protein activate the mTOR pathway, and that can be actually a part of the negative effect of.
Yeah. No, it can be disruptive to DNA and mitochondria. It doesn't look good if you go too high in the protein. The guy who said eat mostly plants, everything in moderate. He's a very famous author. I'm trying to remember. Anyway, he's also pushed psychedelics in his latest book. So Michael Pollan. So I'm not into that at all. But he was right. Be moderate in anything that you eat or do. But particularly the protein story has gotten crazy.
Yeah, and we see the U shape almost everywhere. It's not never more the merrier. You cannot consume tons of protein and it will be okay. You need to find the right balance for that. So it makes a lot of sense. And so let's talk a bit about, if we are talking about diet, about a supplement. Any supplement that we should consider, and I know your answer, and if not, why?
I wouldn't take any supplement. The data is void. There isn't any to back it up. If you're healthy and you have a good, diet that we discussed, if you have a specific condition, that's different. So the data that exists today do not back up supplement, and certainly not that there's any anti-aging supplement, which is what a lot of people are taking So I tell my patients if they oftentimes will reveal their long supplement list. And I say, what this is doing is enriching your urine, your very expensive urine, but it isn't helping you, or if it is, we don't know. And it could have, some of these supplements even have adverse effects, side effects.
Yeah.
So we need to not buy into the supplement world. Now, here's what we have, Gil. We have mistrust of the medical community. We have more and more people thinking that there's a better plan out there. And they believe these people that don't have data, that have secrets, and they have the secrets, they have hunches. Well, you know what? I don't believe in secrets and hunches. I want to review all the data, and there's nothing there for the supplements for healthy people with no, medical conditions that warrant a specific supplement.
Yeah.
As a Longevity by Design podcast listener, you understand the value of improving your health for today and for all the years ahead. And if you want to live your healthiest, longest life possible, you need to understand what's going on inside. At Inside Tracker, we take a personalized approach to Healthspan optimization that eliminates guesswork from your wellness plan. Inside Tracker analyzes blood biomarker and DNA data, along with physiomarker data from fitness trackers like Oura Ring, to deliver personalized food, supplement, lifestyle, and exercise recommendations that allow you to take control and improve your health span. And for a limited time, Longevity by Design listeners can get 20% off at the Inside Tracker store. So if you're ready to receive a personal health analysis and data-driven wellness plan to optimize your body for the long haul, then it's time to start inside. Visit insidetracker.com/podcast to get started today. That's insidetracker.com/podcast to get started today.
So let me refine the question now. Let's talk about personalized nutrition and personal supplementation. So let's assume that you have a patient with a very low vitamin B12, or someone that have other issue like very low iron. Would you not recommend for them to take that supplement, or it's for this condition it's okay?
Oh, I think for those specific conditions, it's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, someone has bone density problem, and there's something wrong with their vitamin D pathway, as you say, iron. No, that's fine. But if you're healthy, there's no reason to be taking these things. And most of the people, this is a huge industry. Most people taking them are healthy people.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. That's the multivitamin, but I think that maybe a bit different than you, that or sounds like maybe we agree that take the supplement based on the deficiency or the issue that you have. And,
Yeah.
It's exactly like, in a way, it's like treating a disease. So a lot of time, I'm sure that you know that you take a specific drug based on a diagnosis. So the same here. If you have a low vitamin B12, take vitamin B12. If you have low iron,
Sure.
and,
Exactly.
Makes
And
a lot
if
of
you
sense.
want to take a multivitamin once a day, it's not going to hurt you. Just no evidence it's going to help you. And
It's expensive,
yeah.
And another interesting point in your book, and something that I agree with, is the effect of exercise on the lifespan and health span. Can you discuss that a bit?
This is remarkable. If you look at the power of exercise to promote cognition, to prevent these 3 age-related diseases, including cancer, it's stunning. So cardiovascular, we knew about that. The main things that we've learned are that it isn't just aerobic exercise. I thought that was the main thing. No, strength training or resistance training and balance training are really important. So this is what we have to integrate into our physical activity. And it doesn't have to be, going all out. And even just light, you go for a walk for half an hour, a few thousand steps, that's great. So what we've learned is, there's and I have a figure in the book where we don't know the limit. Like if you just keep exercising, hours and hours a day, do you get to a point where there's no return or even harm? We don't know that. It's debated. But for moderate and vigorous physical activity, vigorous meaning that you're doing it and you couldn't really have a good conversation with someone, or if you want to check your heart rate, it's, over 130, 140, whatever. that is something that's good. It isn't necessary, but it helps. And the effects are pronounced. And it isn't, of course, you want to make sure you get sessions of resistance training in every week. And I always do the balance training and resistance together because they're so important.
Yeah, no, and I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that as you said that you have been surprised by that, I think that the majority of the population somehow don't get it, that strength training is so important.
Oh,
And especially for, let's say, the elderly or people, let's say, above the age of 50 or 60, and specifically for postmenopausal women, it's much harder for them to build muscle.
well, yeah, especially because they're losing muscle. And
Exactly.
you nailed it, because this is where it really becomes important. As you get to 60 plus, and of course, you could start much earlier, but that's when you start really losing your muscle mass.
Yeah.
And you're going to be prone to not just falls and instability, but, it's also correlated with these big three diseases. So this is so important to emphasize that we have been fixated on steps. 10,000 steps, 8,000 steps. Steps are only one dimension of exercise, right?
Absolutely.
And we have to we don't have a quantity for resistance. We don't have X factor. And that's one of the problems is, I talk to so many patients and they say, here, look at my steps. I said, that's good. But what about, as you get older, this is something you got to work on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that steps is great. It's better than nothing. So the worst is to be sedentary, then do some steps that way. But then, unfortunately, you need to pump some iron and build the muscle. And the early that you do it, it's easier because then you have, it's like, in a way, I looked at it like investing for your retirement, like the 401k. So if you invest earlier, it's you have you have the compounding effect. It's the same here. It's much harder to start at the age of 70 when you are completely frail. You can, and if someone asking me when to start, I would say today or tomorrow, but start it. But it's better if you started a year or two ago. It's the same. If I knew that I could start saving for my 401k at the age of 20, I would do that. But it's too late for me. So absolutely, I think that's a great point, and I think that there is a lot of information in your book. So again, I would recommend everyone to read the book. Another interesting point that you discussed there is about sleep and its effect on Healthspan, and actually you came with a specific amount of sleep that we need, that it's a bit different than what others are saying. Can you describe that?
Yeah, that was a shocker to me. For years, I thought 8 hours is this magic, number, right? But all the data showed the best was 7. Now, it turns out, obviously, when you're looking at things at the population level, that can be misleading. For some people, that 8 hours is great. But if you just look at all people, that the outcomes were best with the average or mean of 7. Now, it's one metric. The others that are very important that we learned in recent years. So sleep regularity is really important. So, going to stay on a clock. Now, people, we like to be, of course, do it, be erratic. But it turns out our body wants us to be in rhythm. Yeah. And staying on a regularity affects cancer, cardiovascular, and neurodegenerative and Alzheimer. So that's one thing. The other thing is we learned a lot about how we get rid of our waste products out of our brain. These are these metabolites that are basically pro-inflammatory, toxic. Every night we clear them through these glymphatic, these channels. And if you don't get deep sleep, a lot of it, you don't clear. In fact, if you take Ambien, it looks like you have a backflow. You don't get it at all, even though you feel like you slept. So we've learned a lot about sleep health. And that one is deep sleep is really critical for preventing neurodegenerative disease. So yeah, if you don't have good sleep, it's time to work on that. And I have seen, even my own, I wasn't a good deep sleeper. I was horrified how many minutes only I got, but it's modifiable. and I've really gone all out, and I'm going to keep going out to try to get to an average of an hour. I started less than 15 minutes. I'm now, averaging about 45. But if you're older, you lose deep sleep, this slow wave sleep in the early time of the night. So it's something that really, you can get on it, and you can, many ways you can increase it and be a better sleeper and get those bad stuff, get that stuff out of your brain.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And there are so many ways to modify it.
Yeah.
Set sleep regularity, don't drink alcohol late, don't drink coffee late,
Or don't eat late.
yeah,
Don't
don't
exercise late.
Don't exercise. There are a lot of, there are plenty of things that you can do. And again, somehow the population don't understand it. And the point about 7 hours, I think that there are some people that tend to sleep more, and that's okay, as you said. I think that the long sleeper are usually people that don't sleep well. So as you said, they might sleep 9 hours, but their deep sleep is only 15 minutes. So they stay in the bed because they are still tired.
Yeah.
But they need somehow to find a way to optimize their deep sleep. So absolutely a very good point about that. And another interesting point that you raise in the book is the something that, again, I think that it started during the COVID, that each of us lived in his cave, and we used to do a lot of Zoom calls, and we lost our social relationship. The most of the social relationship is on TikTok, on Facebook. So can you discuss that and why it's so important to have a real social relationship, not via this?
Yeah. Social isolation is really bad for your health, healthy aging. And the data there are very strong, this linkage between the two. So, as you said, Gil, as we get older, there's one graph in the book that shows this, and many people are struck by it. But as we get older, we tend to become a recluse. And that's not good, because that interaction with our family, our friends, or whatever network, whether it's in person, ideally, or even if it's virtual, it's essential. We're social animals, and our mental health depends on it. And as you know, mental health interacts with our physical health. And this is a great way to deal with anxiety and stress, depression, by being connected with other people.
Yeah. No, I think that that's something, again, that we are underestimating the value of that. And we need to pay attention to it and spend time. Everyone like to work from home and basically be at home all the day, which is good. I think that there are a lot of advantages. I like it as well, but once, twice a week, go to the office, meet with people, in the weekend, meet with friends, with family. There is nothing like that. But by the way, there is another point about that actually you can kill two birds in one stone in a way, is you can have the social effect, but also take it to nature. And it's
Nature is so impressive. And, we're talking about prescriptions for people to be out in nature. It's so interesting relationship with healthy aging, with avoiding these conditions. So we can't get enough of that. And as you said, do the nature walk with a friend or a family member, but being outdoors and being in nature is something that you just can't get enough of. And most people, unfortunately, they're not prioritizing it.
Yeah.
So that these lifestyle plus factors, they extend, music is really therapeutic, and a lot of things that we can do that a lot of us are not doing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There are so many examples in the book. So again, I recommend the audience to buy the book, read it, and learn from that. And another question about that, going now maybe a bit deeper into the longevity domain. So the longevity domain, there are a lot of discussion about repurposing drugs such as Rapamycin, Metformin, and GLP-1 agonists to promote longevity. What is your view about those?
Well, I don't see any data for rapamycin. Many of these so-called longevity gurus or experts or researchers, whatever you want to call them, they taking rapamycin and they're recommending it to everyone. They have a rapamycin leaderboard. And the funny thing is, on the leaderboard of 20, 30 of them, they all take different doses at different times, like once a week, once every day, once every other day, different. That's how little we know. But here's the problem with the rapamycin story. As we know, it suppresses the immune system. And we can't measure the immune system. So some people at a low dose can say, oh, I'm only taking a low dose. Well, guess what? If we could measure the immune system, it could be really down, which is inviting a cancer, for example. So since we can't measure it, for people to think, of course, there have been people taking rapamycin who got serious infections, and they were taking what they called low dose. So without any data in humans and only relying on, mice and rats, we shouldn't be turning to rapamycin, even though we have these advocate people. The same for metformin is less of a risk, but we don't have the benefit in man. And for decades, we've been giving metformin for people with type 2 diabetes. If it had a pronounced effect, we probably would have seen it by now. Now, there's lots of other ideas for promoting lifespan and health span. Some of them are very elegant, like cellular reprogramming. However, when you do that to a mouse and you make it young, you also can induce tumors. Yeah, that's not a good thing. Each of them have risk. Senolytics, which is getting rid of the senescent cells out of the body. We can't tell the good senescent cells versus the bad senescent cells. So if you take them all out of the body, you're taking out the good ones. Each of them have their liabilities and risks, and none of them have been shown to be effective in humans so far. The GLP-1 drugs that you mentioned, the Ozempic and Mounjaro, these drugs have a lot of potential because they are reducing inflammation. But have they improved health span? No, they haven't even been studied for that. They might work for Alzheimer's. They're working really well in a lot of obesity-related things, but we haven't seen the Alzheimer's. If those two trials are going to be out next year, if they're successful, then we have a whole new day for possibly seeing health span effects of the GLP-1 drug.
Yeah, and I interviewed Dr. Holst, which is the scientist in Denmark that actually discovered the GLP-1. And that was fascinating. I think that there is a lot of potential with that. And I think that there are potential with other. But I agree with you 100%. I wouldn't take a drug that worked in mice on my body. For me specifically, there are people with more risk tolerant than me because the risk might be higher than the reward. Yeah. I would wait for a clinical trial in human, but there are some people that are willing to do that. So good luck to them, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, if they want to do it personally, I don't have a problem. But when they're recommending it to patients and, when they give a talk and they say, here's the magic dose, this is what I take, you should take. That's where I would draw the line. Just come with the data, come with the proof. Yeah. It could be risky.
And mice data or dog data or monkey data is not enough. Show it in human.
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah. I'll even take proxy data, like it changes your organ clocks and it changes all these things, decreases inflammation and improves your body-wide epigenetic clock. Give me data to show it's working. We don't even have that in people.
Actually, I don't know if you've seen a couple of days ago, there was a paper that came from the Bach Institute about plasma infusion.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It was a very small one, but they showed some effect on interesting effect on the biological clock. It's an initial study, but it's very exciting to see that maybe there is something about the plasma infusion.
Anyway. I saw that, and the problem with that study, and it's also in the New York Times today, is that if you were to take young plasma and put it into an old person, of course you'd see the biological clock is changed, but it's very transient, right? Yeah. That isn't enough of a measure, and it's a very expensive procedure. very expensive. And you have to get, I mean, there are clinics that are, pushing it and charging patients tens of thousands of dollars to get plasmapheresis. That's not enough data from that little study to support it. And also, how long does it last? If you go through all that expense and getting hooked up to these machines, these are not trivial hookups to your bloodstream, which carry risk. If it only lasts for a week, what good is that? So we don't know. It's all, a bunch of big unknowns there.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's very early. And I think that the end result will be, let's find if there is some a small molecule or some protein that is important, let's find this protein. And then
Oh, yeah. Well, that's another point I made in the book that you're touching on, is that there's all these theories about the magical protein in the plasma, platelet factor 4, this growth factor. We don't even know. If you have to give the whole plasma of a young person, why can't we isolate if there is a benefit, what is it?
Yeah, I think that that's the end result. And I think that it's similarly, you raised the point about reprogramming. I think that there are some movement right now. Let's, instead of using the 4 Yamanaka factor, let's use a small molecule that mimic them. And then hopefully this molecule will provide the good stuff and not the bad stuff. So I think that we are in an exciting time, but I agree with you. You need to be cautious about your body because that's the most important machine that you have. So don't inject or take some.
I mean, look, it may be that these things we've been talking about will work really well. I in data, I trust, right? I mean, but right now we don't have it.
Yeah. One more interesting point that you raised in the book, and I heard you at the script discussion last week, and I really liked is the discussion about basically maintaining, and you are cardiologist, so maintaining low level of LDL and ApoB and LP(a), and specifically using a statin and the risk of high dose statin, which actually I've seen by myself because I have like a familial risk for high cholesterol. And I started with 10 milligram of statin, and then my clinician said, okay, go to 40, and I'm testing my blood every 2 months. And I started to see my glucose starting to creep up. I spoke with my clinician, and she said, oh, it's okay because your A1C is not up yet. But the fasting glucose starting first, and then the A1C will go up because it's every 90 days. So I think that that's something that I would. I really liked what you said, and I would like our audience to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, well, over 10 years ago, I wrote a New York Times op-ed about this problem of high-dose statins, potent statins, inducing type 2 diabetes. Oh man, did I get a backlash from the cardiologist saying, oh, you should tell people that they shouldn't take this. No, it was to alert from the data, again, that was with Crestor, rosuvastatin, or Lipitor, atorvastatin at high doses. They have a liability for, just like you said, and you don't want to wait for your hemoglobin A1C. If your fasting glucose is trending up as you take these high doses, then you have a problem. So turns out, since that over a decade ago, and I wrote in the book, there's been many more studies, and every one of them points out this liability. Now, it's not frequent, but even if it happens in a few percent of people, the number, as you know, the number of people taking statins, particularly intensive statin, there are other ways to get the cholesterol down, LDL cholesterol. So we should, if we're going to put somebody on a high dose potent statin, so-called intensive statin, we should monitor their glucose. You see, you do it yourself, right? But most people, they don't know. Doctors don't even know. They just are glib about it. And it's a real problem because if you're trading off getting a low LDL with a drug that you could use other or supplementary drugs, you could lower the statin dose and use a ezetimibe or many combinations. Yeah. It's not acceptable to induce someone's type 2 diabetes. And I still remain upset that the cardiology community and primary care physicians are not on the alert for this. They should be, anytime you use a high dose of those two statins or other potent statins, you should be checking a glucose and if, hemoglobin A1C, fine, just to make sure that the person isn't going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, and I had a discussion with my primary care clinician, and she said, no, stay with that. So I said, okay, and I cut it back, and that's it. And I'll meet with, so I
and
can
then you
make
don't have any more problem, then you're fine. Yeah.
But I can do that because I'm awfully educated enough to make such a decision. But most patients are not. So I think that what you are trying to do with educating the clinician is important. And I don't want to blame them. They are very busy. They have like 10 to 15 minutes a year to meet with a patient, and they need to fill the EMR all the time. So they are very busy. But somehow we need to educate them. And at the end of the day, it's also the responsibility of the patient. So you need to, as a patient, you need to be careful and read and listen and try to challenge the clinician way, because sometimes they are wrong. They are
Exactly. Many doctors are aware of this and do look for it, but unfortunately, still today, they're the minority because we've had this kind of blind acceptance that statins are magical and have this great. They have side effects, and this is one that's one of the more common ones that people need to be aware of, both patients and doctors.
Yeah. So talking about that, another new technology that appearing, actually a couple of technologies, and they are more focused on cancer detection, are liquid biopsy and full body MRI. So they are coming right now, and there is a lot of excitement about them. Can you describe, or can you tell me what is your opinion about those technologies?
Well, I am very anti total body MRI, and there's companies, particularly Pronovo, that are marketing the hell out of it, and they have these testimonials from people like Kim Kardashian and celebrities. It saved my life and all that. It's all a bunch of bunk as far as I'm concerned, because for everyone that maybe it helped, there may be who knows how many X people that have been hurt. I've had patients that had total body MRI who had a liver biopsy, who almost bled to death, had a lung biopsy for a nodule, had a collapsed lung. I mean, you don't want to do this unless there's a good reason, right? And just to show up thinking that, oh, I want to make sure I don't have cancer. Well, a lot of people will have these nodules. In the book, I review my friend Drew Kular, who is a cardiologist at Cornell, who is a New Yorker journalist. And he was doing a story on this Pronovo company, and he decided for part of the story, he would get a total body MRI. He's in his 40s. He gets a prostate something or other, a mass. They don't even still know what it is. He's had biopsies every 6 months. That's not a pleasant procedure, prostate biopsy. This is what happens. And he's now, this is on his brain. It's taken over, in his brain of anxiety. You don't want that. Now, if you're looking for cancer because you have a high risk, and it's a bona fide high risk with multiple layers of data, then you go to the other test that you mentioned, the multi-cancer early detection blood test. These are getting better and better. The one that's most used is the so-called Grail Gallery test. It's expensive, $800 or $900, and it's not that great for picking up early disease. That is stage 0.
Yeah.
But if you're going to pick up cancer, much better to pick it up on a blood test, microscopic, than on a scan, where if you see a nodule that's a mass that's cancer, you're talking about billions of cells. It's not like a early detection. So we're making big inroads in these multi-cancer early detection tests. And right now we have some available. There's going to be more. They're going to get better and better. And that's the way to go if you're screening for cancer and you're at high risk because of multiple layers of data.
Yeah. And there are some early detection, or not early detection, but screening for cancer that the medical community already approve, and not everyone is doing it, like for prostate cancer and PSA for prostate cancer, and doing some for breast cancer, and there is the for colorectal cancer. So there are a few screening that already the medical community is allowing you to do. And I recommend everyone to do it. And I've done the one for the colorectal cancer and found a few polyps. So I convinced my clinician, instead of wait another 10 years, I waited only 2 years and did it again. So there are a lot of things that you can already do with the medical community.
Yeah, but they need to be improved, because if we send every woman for a mammogram and only 12% ever in their life will develop breast cancer, why can't we partition the risk better? We can, but we're not doing it. And for the PSA, why did President Biden get, metastatic prostate cancer when he wasn't checking a PSA, when he might have been very high risk by a polygenic risk score? We're not using the tools we have, Gil, to define risk. And I don't agree with mass screening. Mass screening is treating humans like cattle, like we're all the same, not treating us as unique individual. So I think we need to revisit how we do screening and make it intelligent and not wasteful and not inducing false positives as well as false negatives. That's one of the problems with the liquid biopsy, is you get negative and you think, oh, I don't have cancer. You still could have cancer. You just didn't pick it up. So we have to do better than this. This is what we are stuck in. We're stuck in this mass screening with anyone over age 50 or 40, you report for this or that. No, we should be screening for risk, and we don't do that.
Yeah. No, and that's by the way, it's a fair point, and I agree with you. And I think that's getting back to what you said about the AI and using polygenic scores and other. Let's use all of that. A lot of us have already DNA sequence, and if not, you can do that. And then based on that, there are so many polygenic scores that you can find. I found that my high risk for LDL cholesterol using a polygenic score. So you can,
there you go.
And then based on that, you can direct your effort to that. So I agree with you 100%. I think that the medical community better than me. It's moving at a glacial pace, and we need to find a way to push
I've been pushing these polygenic risk scores for many years, and only now, in the last year, as I reviewed in the book, some of the leading health systems are making this standard. Yeah. But it's taken years to get to this point, and it's not appropriate, because these are very inexpensive tests from saliva that are now validated to the hilt. And you learn about risk. If it's not high risk, you don't worry about it. But if you're in the top 5 or 10% of something, then you get cued in like you did.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with you. And talking about early detection, if we're looking at Alzheimer's diseases, there are a few. One of them is very new. One of them is not new, but it's a ApoE4 genetic marker that basically can suggest that you might have a much higher risk for Alzheimer. Another one is the p-tau 217. So do you want to discuss it? And when do you think that it will get into the routine screening of a normal American?
Well, I don't think it should be for everyone. Again, just like I was saying about mass screening, only in people potential high risk. So I would even recommend that now. If you have a family history of Alzheimer's and you have an ApoE4 gene, a lot of people have had that test. 20% or more of us have that, which is a higher risk for Alzheimer's. And if you have 2 copies of that, it's a much higher risk.
Yeah.
And let's say you have a polygenic risk score for Alzheimer's, and that's high. Then you get a p-tau 217. And soon you'll also be able to get a brain organ clock, proteomic score for your organs, especially the brain. Anyway, now the p-tau 217, which is available, has been in the US for almost 2 years. That test tells you, confirms high risk, but unlike the other tests, it helps to establish when, and it helps to use as a way to, if your interventions like lifestyle are bringing it down. And it's very responsive to exercise. It's responsive to lifestyle improvement. So here we have a test that's like an LDL cholesterol for the heart. We're not using it in people who have high risk for Alzheimer's. We're as far as I'm concerned, we're missing a huge opportunity to defer or prevent their Alzheimer's disease, and we're not doing it. That's why I wrote in my Substack, the ground truth Substack, about a breakthrough for Alzheimer's disease. These markers, these specific protein markers, are perhaps the biggest thing ever to do something about Alzheimer's, because the drugs we have for people who have Alzheimer's, they're terrible. They're risky, they're very expensive, very cumbersome, but we could prevent Alzheimer's and we're not doing it. Now, obviously, we need much more work here, but the initial data, the p-tau217 blood test is as good as a p-tau PET scan, which is very expensive, lots of radiation. It's as good as a lumbar puncture cerebrospinal fluid. I mean, you don't have to go through a lumbar puncture, a needle in your back and your spine to get the fluid. So this is like a great test, and it has other, like there's p-tau 181 and there's neurofilament and so you could get a panel, but right now the best of all picks up 20 years in advance of mild cognitive impairment, Alzheimer's. So yeah, I don't recommend it for everyone, but if you're at high risk, this is the thing to use to use it as a way to reduce it, lower your risk. Maybe the GLP-1 drugs will be used here. Other drugs will come to prevent Alzheimer's, and they're in the hopper right now.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. The future is bright, but right now, and I agree with you that there is not a magic bullet for Alzheimer right now as a drug.
No, terrible.
So
but to treat it, but the
to
chance to prevent this, if I can underscore one essential point, is we spend too much time, trying to find treatment that usually don't work very well. We don't spend any time, now that we have multimodal AI, we have all these layers of data. This is the moment for prevention. If there ever was a moment for the 3 age-related diseases, this is it. That's the most important thing from the Super Agers book. This is our moment for prevention.
No, and again, I couldn't agree with you more, and I think that it's pity that our healthcare system is more like treatment and not a prevention. So
well, part of it though, it isn't the fault of the health system about the sick care stuff. No, because we couldn't do it. We didn't have the layers of data. We didn't have the AI. So we didn't have that possibility. We've talked about prevention, the medical profession, for millennia, not just last week or a decade, forever. But we just didn't have the way to do it. And you know what prevention is today? If you go to your primary care doctor, I'm going to give you a pneumovax vaccine. And I think you should get a shingles vaccine. Yeah. And I want to just check your LDL. That's not prevention. Prevention is finding out if you're at high risk for disease, getting all the requisite data layers, and preventing that disease. That's what prevention is.
Yeah, and you have a lot of specific intervention for those specific disease in your book. Can you elaborate on what are the most effective habits to delay Alzheimer?
Well, we reviewed them. It's exercise is extraordinarily important. The deep sleep, the anti-inflammatory diet, these are all very important. And we've seen the effects of social engagement. We also have the environmental toxins that are making things worse, air pollution, microplastics, and forever chemicals. So we have that in the background and keep accumulating because we're not doing anything about it that needs to be addressed. But overall, we have a path that will include drugs like GLP-1 because they inhibit inflammation in the brain. So even if the Ozempic trials don't click in early 2026, next year, there's going to be a lot more work on these gut hormones because the neuro ones get in the brain better. They're more potent. They are talking to our immune system and talking to the brain. So the gut hormone field, some people think, oh my gosh, we hit it. We had these miracle GLP-1 drugs for obesity. No, we're just at the beginning. There's another 10 more of these hormones that we can mimic with pills and that are going to even complement, add to our power to manipulate inflammation and the immune system.
No, sounds like we are really in the revolution of the gut hormone. And
Yeah.
I see it, my view is that right now we are on the, maybe close to the top of the AI revolution, and you are involved in that. So the AI is starting to get to the peak. I think that I call it the weight loss, but let's call it the gut hormone revolution is coming. And we see that already in the US, more than 10 million people are using it. And some people are criticizing it and say, hey, those guys, they can lose weight with diet. But apparently they couldn't. They tried a lot and they failed. So basically it's a disease, and the addressable market just for the weight loss is almost 100 million in the US. But everything that you said about cardiovascular diseases and renal diseases and dementia, that it's almost all of us might use the GLP-1.
Well, it's possible someday. It may not be the drugs that we have now in pill form, but it may be, other gut hormones. And I never would have guessed that some of these great advances in medicine would come from hormones in our gut. I mean, when I was in medical school, the only hormone in our gut I knew of was insulin. Now we have, 15 of them or so. I mean, it's just amazing. So this is a very exciting field that it's just getting going, even with the data that you mentioned, how many people are taking them.
Yeah. And just to add to that, and the third revolution, in my opinion, that's just starting, and it's basically the subject of your book, The Longevity Revolution, that's starting, and the Healthspan revolution. How can we not only cure disease, but live better, prevent it, and basically improve the quality of our life? And to follow on that, I think that in your book, you showed a very interesting data about if you adopt all the recommendation or all the behavior that actually can help you to live longer, let's say, don't smoke, don't drink too much alcohol, exercise, and so on and so forth. And again, our listener can read it in the book. You can actually extend your life significantly. Let's go back to the 98 years old lady that all of her siblings died early, but why she lived longer is because she adopted a healthy lifespan. And if I recall correctly, it can accumulate to around 20 years. So if you do all of that well, you might live 20 or so years longer. And that's amazing. I'm not sure that people understand that.
Well, it's a stunning graph that shows certainly 10 years. 10 years more of healthy aging if you get on this, by age 50. Sooner the better, and it's never too late either. You don't eke out as many years of health span if you get on it much later, but you still get some. But you can get easily 7 to 10 years by all the data. And these graphs are stunners. I have to say, on the one hand, we have all these companies that are marketing longevity, and this is not what they're marketing. They're marketing, anti-aging supplements and plasmapheresis and who knows, total body MRIs and, testing out the wazoo. These are things that are very inexpensive that everyone can do. And the problem, Gil, is we won't get everyone to do these things.
Yeah.
Because people don't know their risk. When they know their risk, the chance of them doing these things is greatly enhanced. And that's why we need to understand people's risk. Because to say everyone should do these 7 things, right? That sounds really good, but it's not going to work. It does work when you say, all right, here we sit down and this is the disease that is in your future, but we can change it. And by the way, with AI, we can say you win, so we can really narrow this down, which is so extraordinary. This is such a different time to address prevention.
Yeah. And I think that to add to that, I completely agree with you about the AI, but on top of that, there is the behavioral science. And how can I tell you at the right time what you should do today or what you should do this week based on what you have done last week? So
that's
I think
where
that
the AI kicks in there too, for the virtual health coach.
Exactly.
It has all your data, and it has, you're getting feedback from your whether it's your phone, your avatar, or whatever, and it's coaching you. And that, I think, is not going to work for everyone. But your point, the AI here, by the way, like there's many different AI things that we haven't even touched on. That's one of them. Another is the retina. The AI of the retina is a gateway to all these diseases, not just in the brain. It can predict 5-7 years before a person has Parkinson or Alzheimer's disease. So we have these images that we're not using with AI. We have a health coach that hasn't been developed yet. So we're going to use AI in lots of different ways to supplement what I've been describing as the person's data.
Yeah, it sounds like the future look bright, and I hope that we will be fortunate enough to live to that point. I would like to sum up, and usually what I do, I ask if you would like, if you are going to provide one tip for Healthspan and longevity for our audience, what will be that tip?
Well, it's hard to get, one tip because there's so many. But if you're going to do one thing you're not doing now, exercise with the different types of exercise, that would be the one. You really should get on it because the data are powerful. And, the other tip is don't think it's in your genes. It might be, but more often than not, it isn't. And there might be things in your genes that you don't know about because of the admixture of your mother and father and how those different genomes came together. So this family history thing that we rely on, we overemphasize this. And that's a tip for like me with my terrible family history. That's a tip to remember, that don't feel like you're doomed because of your family.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a few people, the centenarian, that they are lucky. They have a good gene, and I don't know if you know Nir Barzilai.
Oh yeah, I know Nir, sure.
From Albert Einstein. He always have a nice story about a centenarian that she's in 105 and he's coming to visit her, and she's smoking cigarette, and he's telling her, don't you know that smoking is not good? And she's saying, yes, all my 4 clinicians that died told me that, but they are dead and I'm still alive. So some of us are lucky, most of us are not lucky. So we need to work hard in order to get to the point that the lucky people have. But the lucky people are very small. It's like
very small. Yeah, we have to emphasize that point, Gil, because you're usually not going to get there from good luck. You usually get there from taking care of yourself.
Yeah. Okay, so it was a fascinating and a great discussion, Dr. Topol, and we look forward to exploring the research in the field of longevity each month with you and the other leading scientists. For more information, please go to www.insighttracker.com/podcast. Again, thank you so much. It was fascinating.
Thanks for listening to Longevity by Design. Please subscribe to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. Longevity by Design is powered by Inside Tracker, a personalized health optimization platform that helps people improve their lives by improving their bodies from the inside out using personalized, science-backed recommendations for nutrition, supplements, and lifestyle changes. To learn more, visit insidetracker.com/podcast.